I refused to marry, so my parents gave my sister everything, but she sold it for a business. Now they expect me to buy back the $250,000 heirloom. About 4 months ago, my parents and I had a major disagreement. The battle was over something extremely personal and precious to me, a family relic. My sister was about to marry when the quarrel broke out. Now I've always been clear about the fact that I don't intend to marry or have children. I've simply never seen that life path for myself. My family understands this. However, rather of honoring my decision, my parents chose to punish me by doing such a heinous act. My parents asked both of us home for supper the day after my sister got engaged. At first, it appeared to be a typical family evening. We were all seated around the table, talking and eating, when my parents revealed, right in the middle of dinner, that they wanted my sister to have the whole family heirloom as her wedding gift. They promised her she would receive every single piece. I was astonished. It took me a moment to understand what they just stated. To clarify, this jewelry collection was not made up of random old objects. They were really pricey objects with a lot of sentimental significance. The things had been passed down over several generations. Growing up, my mother even said that the heritage will be shared between my sister and myself. That's why it seemed like a betrayal when they abruptly changed their views without speaking to me. I sat there trying to seem cool, but inside I was enraged and horribly upset. This was not just unfair, it felt like a smack in the face. What made matters worse was that this was not the first time something like this had occurred. You know, all my life, I felt that my sister was their favorite. She's the youngest and has always received everything from them. More attention, more assistance, and now the heritage that was meant to be shared between us. My sister had always received preferential treatment from them, even when we were little. The difference in how we were raised began from the moment she was born. I can recall my father throwing a great family party to commemorate her birth. He stood up in front of everyone and addressed her as their miraculous, wonderful baby. My parents were relieved because, unlike me, my sister was born normal. For reference, I was born with a hearing disability, and I've had to use a hearing aid since I was a youngster. Rather than recognizing this as a natural part of who I am, my parents have treated it as a dirty secret. They have always expressed their wish that I did not have that defect. They seemed embarrassed by me, as if I were not the child they had planned for. So, when my sister was born without a handicap, they instantly liked her and favored her more. They've always made disparaging remarks about me and reminded me that I'm not as flawless as my sister. They've told me things like, a noble man would want to marry a deaf girl like me, or, I shouldn't have such high standards in men because of my hearing issues and just settle down with anyone who would have me. As if my condition made me unworthy of love or marriage. Because of their attitude toward me, I worked very hard to leave my hometown and attend college. After graduating from college, I decided to leave home and forge my own path in life. I want independence, space, and freedom. And because I've chosen not to pursue the typical route they expected, such as marrying, settling down, and becoming the sort of woman they believe I should be, they've become even more enraged. My sister, on the other hand, remained with them, constantly at their side, living the life they had planned for her, and they have always admired that about her. My parents have always been clear about their expectations of me. They've repeatedly advised me that I should marry as soon as possible and have grandkids, as if those are the only ways to live a complete, meaningful life. They believe that if I do not accomplish these things, I would be living an incomplete life, which I will regret when I am older and alone. My mother has even told me directly that as a woman, my role on this globe is to bring new life into the world. She said that by refusing to have children, I am not only disappointing her, but also disobeying God. As you might expect, it isn't simply pressure, it's emotional blackmail laced with guilt and manipulation. Despite this, I have always stayed firm and refused to marry merely for the sake of it. I created my life on my own terms, not theirs. So, when my sister got engaged, my parents clearly saw it as an opportunity to put me in my place, so they gave her all of our family artifacts. My sister was nearly shining with delight as my mother made the announcement. She was all smiles and thank yous, evidently happy with the whole affair. But what stung the most was that she didn't even question why I wasn't receiving anything. She did not check in with me. She didn't care what that choice meant to me, or how upset I was. When I tried to address my parents about how unjust it was, my father simply shut it off. He stated that he and my mother thought my sister was the perfect person to carry on the family legacy. My mother joined in, stating that because I had decided not to marry or have children, they believed it only made fair for my sister to receive all of the artifacts and pass them on to her children. In their minds, legacy equates to offspring, and since I'm not giving them any, I have no say. I couldn't simply sit there silently. So I objected. I reminded them of something vital. My grandmother had always stated that both my sister and I should receive the family treasure. That was her pledge to us, and that was always the plan. But my mother, with the same finality she usually employs, maintained that she knows best. She claimed that out of the two of us, she thought my sister was the most deserved, and she didn't care what I thought. My father accused me of being greedy for even asking for my portion of the treasure. He wholeheartedly supported my mother's choice, emphasizing that their minds were made up and there was no place for disagreement. All of their words hurt. It was more than simply the heirloom at that moment. It was everything they'd ever told me. They had made me feel insignificant several times. Music. Being the least beloved child is one thing. Being reminded of it all the time is quite another. And being made to feel invisible in my own family is something else completely. It seemed as if I will always be the one who was neglected. Like, no matter what I tried, I could never live up to their ideal of the perfect daughter. And I was hardly the perfect daughter. After supper, I decided I'd had enough. I realized I needed to step back from my family. So I made the decision to maintain little communication with my parents and sister. I stopped reaching out and allowed others to reach out less and less. I couldn't take their conduct anymore. Even though my sister invited me to her wedding, I respectfully declined. I decided it would be better for my own peace of mind to remain away. I was not prepared to face with more of the same pain and disappointment. But my sister was not pleased with my decision, so she attempted to exacerbate the matter. Because I had banned her on my phone and social media, she resorted to sending me a series of emails. She didn't even try to figure out why I wasn't coming. She was only upset that I would not be present for her in front of her groom's family. To top things off, she had the audacity to tell me that even if I wasn't attending, I should at least give her a wedding present. She urged me to get her an air fryer and a Dyson Airwrap, stating that with my income, I could easily afford them, and that I should give them to her as a wedding present. I just couldn't believe it. The arrogance was amazing. I responded that she had already gotten my portion of the inheritance, the family treasures, and she should be content with that. I told her that I had previously given her something meaningful, which was meant to be shared, and that should enough. I did not sugarcoat it. I responded to her that wanting an air fryer and a Dyson Airwrap on top of everything she had already gotten was utterly unreasonable, and she had no right to ask anything extra from me. She was clearly upset by my email and continued to send me emails, but I simply ignored her. I didn't react or send her anything. Anyway, it has been 4 months since I cut off all communication with my family. I've stuck to my decision, staying away from my parents and sister and focused on my own life. I had begun to find some serenity in the area I had made for myself. My folks unexpectedly came up at my door yesterday. This was quite unique. They have never paid me a visit since I cut off touch with them. So having them appear on my porch seemed weird. I had no idea what to anticipate, but I knew it would not be a casual visit. When I inquired what was going on, my mother, with a serious expression on her face, said that it was a family emergency, which was why she and Robert had chosen to come by. The way she stated it, in that cruel tone, had my heart pounding. I panicked for a second, wondering if anything had happened to my sister, or if one of them had suddenly become ill. After all, they would never have turned up unexpectedly like that, unless something was seriously wrong. I allowed them in. But I was on edge. As soon as they sat down, I asked them to get right to the point. I was not in the mood for niceties. I needed to know why they were at my house after all this time. That's when my mother began to tell me that they had missed me during the previous few months and felt terrible about how they treated me the last time we met. I glanced at her cautiously, because this did not sound like her. Mom went on to tell me that after all these months, she and Robert realized they had made a mistake by giving my sister all of their family antiques. She went on almost sheepishly, stating they now see how unfair their actions were and how painful it must have been for me. I couldn't believe what I heard. I scoffed and looked at them suspiciously. This was not like them at all. My parents were never the sort to apologize, much less acknowledge they were wrong. It did not feel genuine. This abrupt dramatic shift in their behavior felt too convenient, too out of character. I had spent years feeling like I was second best. And then they suddenly tried to apologize. It did not make sense. So I asked them straight up, what's really going on? I needed to know what was behind this sudden apology because I had no doubt that there was more to the story than they were telling. I wasn't going to fall for some superficial reconciliation if there was something deeper they weren't saying. My parents exchanged glances, and I could see hesitation in their eyes. After a long pause, my father reluctantly spoke. He explained that they had realized that I was the more deserving of the two of us, and that after everything had happened, they now wanted me to carry on their family legacy rather than my sister. But there was a catch, of course. Before I could receive anything, I had to complete this one task. I was already on high alert, and my skepticism was rising. I amused them by asking what this one thing was. I figured they were just looking for a gesture of goodwill from me before offering me the heirlooms. But what they said next completely confused me. They told me that in order to receive the heirlooms, I needed to buy them back from the exact location where my sister had sold them all. I just stared at them, shocked. My mouth became dry and my mind raced to process what I was hearing. What? My sister had sold the family heirlooms. I could not believe it. I wasn't sure if this was a joke or if I was simply hearing things incorrectly. I asked what they were talking about. That was when my mother finally admitted the truth. She explained that my sister had sold the entire collection of family heirlooms without their knowledge. She used the thousands of dollars she made from selling the items to start her own business. I was stunned, completely speechless. My sister saw it as a way to make a quick buck for herself, so all the years of hard work and sentimental value of those heirlooms vanished. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. How could she have done such a thing? And how could my parents have let this happen without intervening? However, it turns out that my sister did this without even informing our parents. Apparently my sister's business venture had failed miserably. Now she and her husband were in debt. And guess what? She had run back to our parents, pleading for financial help. That's when my parents finally convinced her to admit what she'd done with the heirlooms. At this point my mother broke down and begged me to save the jewelry. She kept saying how much she regretted not listening to Grandma Eleanor and how she should have divided the heirlooms between me and my sister from the beginning, as she had always promised. But because she didn't, everything was destroyed and the heirlooms were lost. I scoffed and asked her how I could possibly save the heirloom after it had already been sold. My father then pointed out that I could still get the entire family heirloom back for $250,000. He explained that after some investigation, they discovered that these heirlooms were now being resold on a website. This is why they sought my assistance in regaining possession of their jewelry. I looked at them in complete shock. $250,000. I almost didn't understand what I was hearing. I pointed out that this was completely ridiculous. How on earth was I supposed to pull $250,000 out of thin air to repurchase the family heirlooms? Even if I had that kind of money, I would never pay that much for something that should have been mine in the first place. I looked at my parents and told them this was entirely their fault. They were the ones who gave the heirlooms to my sister in the first place, despite knowing all along that they should have been divided equally between me and her. And now, because she had turned around and sold everything, they expected me to somehow fix it. It felt like they were attempting to shift all of the responsibility onto me, as if I should be the one to clean up the mess they had made. However, I was not going to correct their mistake. I wasn't going to pay $250,000 just because they hadn't properly managed their family heirlooms. It was not my responsibility to right their wrongs. When my mother heard this, she immediately started arguing. She said I could easily help them because I was a childless single woman with plenty of money. She complained that I was just making excuses. The way she spoke was as if she thought she was entitled to my money. She didn't care why I wasn't willing to just hand over an obscene amount of money to fix a problem that wasn't mine to fix. Then my dad jumped in. He said he understood I was frustrated with them, but that I needed to keep my grudge aside for now and find a way to buy back the heirlooms from the site. He went on saying that the heirlooms were my family legacy also, and that they shouldn't be in the hands of a stranger. I stayed calm as I pointed out the obvious truth. I wasn't going to take on the responsibility of fixing something that should never have been a problem in the first place. If they truly wanted to get the heirlooms back, they should be asking my sister to buy them back, not me. Also, if this was really so important to them, they should have thought about it carefully before giving it all to my irresponsible sister. The decision they made back then led directly to this mess. I mean, my sister has never held a job or earned a cent, and they just gave her thousands of dollars worth of jewelry, expecting her to take care of it. Of course, she sold it. How is it my responsibility to save our family legacy when you didn't even trust me with it in the first place? I asked, my voice steady, but firm. I reminded them that they were the ones who had found my sister more deserving than me to get all the family heirlooms, and had even called me greedy when I had pointed out their unfairness. This was the hard truth, and I wasn't going to sugarcoat it for them. I had every right to be upset, and they couldn't just expect me to shoulder the burden now that everything had fallen apart. It wasn't right. I pointed out that instead of me they should be asking my sister to buy back the heirlooms. But my mother quickly shot back. She said that they had actually tried to pressure my sister to buy them back, but she and her husband were completely broke since her business failed, and he lost his job. They apparently had no money left, were in debt, and in fact, they were relying on my parents for financial support. My father argued that my sister was clearly in no position to help with buying the heirlooms back. He claimed that since I was financially better off, it was up to me now to save the family heirlooms. His words made me feel like I was being manipulated. They expected me to be the savior just because they had failed to make the right decision months ago. I scoffed. I couldn't help it. After everything, this was what they had shown up for at my doorstep. Not to apologize properly, not to try and rebuild a connection with me after all these months, but to ask for money just so they can fix their mistake. I looked them straight in the eye and told them no. Firm and clear. I told them that if this was the reason they had come all this way, expecting me to bail them out after gifting my sister everything, then they could turn around and leave disappointed. I had absolutely no intentions of buying back the heirlooms. Why should I? They weren't even given to me in the first place. They made their choice. They decided that my sister deserved it more than I now. They were just facing the consequences of their decision. At that point, my mother broke down and started crying, saying I was being cruel and unhelpful. She said that I was the only one who could help them now, as if I was supposed to feel guilty for not jumping in. Then my dad joined in, claiming that they had put their egos aside to come ask for help, and that I was turning them away just to be spiteful. Eventually, I managed to get them to leave. I held the door open, and though my mother sobbed and pleaded and my dad hurled a few choice words at me before walking out, I didn't waver. So, Reddit, Emily Lancaster for not helping out my parents. Update 1. Hi everyone. Wow, I wasn't expecting this post to get the kind of attention it did, but I really appreciate the support and messages from all of you. A lot of people are curious about how our family heirloom is even worth $250,000. This is because it isn't just one object. It's a whole collection of jewelry and a few rare cultural items passed down for generations. My grandmother always said it was meant to stay in the family. In the past, my mother did have it appraised, and the value was high even back then because of its history and craftsmanship. Now, can I really buy back these family heirlooms if I want? Well, the answer is both yes and no. I do have a stable career and I earn really well, but I don't just have $250,000 lying around in a vault. That kind of money would eat into my savings, emergency funds, and, honestly, it would wreck me financially. So yes, maybe technically I could pull it off if I absolutely had to, but it would be reckless and, in my opinion, ridiculous to even consider spending that kind of money on something that should have been rightfully mine to begin with. Also, I've stayed no contact with my sister ever since the wedding. After I declined the invitation, she bombarded me with emails, asking for wedding gifts and tried guilt-tripping me. I ignored them all. She knew what she was doing when she took the heirlooms, and she definitely knew what she was doing when she sold them. We haven't spoken since and I have no intention of reaching out. A lot of people have been telling me that I should have gone to a lawyer or taken legal action when my mom gave all the family heirlooms to my sister. I totally get why people are saying that. But unfortunately, there's nothing I can legally do about it. You see, my grandmother didn't technically leave behind a will that stated exactly how the heirloom should be divided. She always said to my mother that she wanted both my sister and me to inherit them equally. It was something she talked about openly when we were younger, and she assumed my mom would honor that wish and be fair to both of her daughters. But legally, since there is no official document, no written will, no trust, it was entirely up to my mom how she chose to handle the family heirloom. So when she decided to give everything to my sister, I had no legal grounds to contest it. It was her decision completely. So no, I couldn't go to court or see a lawyer about it. Anyways, thanks again to everyone who's been trying to look out for me though. It really means a lot. Update 2. As if my parents randomly showing up at my house wasn't enough of a headache. Guess who decided to make a surprise appearance this week? Yep. My sister. This time though, I had learned my lesson. After seeing just how entitled and manipulative my parents were during their visit, I wasn't about to go through that again. So, when my sister knocked on my door, I flat out refused to let her in. She began yelling from the other side of the door about how upset our parents were, how they were now blaming her for being reckless, and how she was being treated like garbage for making a single mistake. Then she started convincing me that if I just paid the money and bought the heirlooms back, everything would be fine. I told her the same thing that I told our parents. This isn't my problem. I was not the one who made a selfish decision. I wasn't the one who sold off decades of family history, and I'm not about to fix something that never should have happened in the first place. She kept saying how unfair it was that everyone was now turning against her and that no one had ever helped her. To be honest, I had to laugh because she had had everything handed to her entire life and was still complaining. She eventually left when she realized I didn't want to hear her out. Thank you to everyone who is still reading and following along. Your comments and support are the only thing keeping me from going insane in this mess. Update 3. My parents have decided to get a second mortgage on their house. Can you believe it? They are willing to go into debt in order to repurchase the family heirlooms that my sister sold. Apparently, the prospect of a stranger owning the heirlooms is so terrifying that they'd rather risk their home than face the consequences of their own actions. It's absolutely perplexing. They act as if the world will end if those items aren't returned to their proper place. To make matters worse, my father has now sent me 3 emails. Each one was practically dripping with disappointment. He keeps saying how disappointed he is that I refuse to help them, and how they had no choice but to take this action to protect our family legacy. As if any of this is my fault, and to top it all off, he has begun to suggest that there is still time for me to make things right by sending them money every month to help cover their loan payments. The audacity. Yeah. They want me to help pay off the loan they took out just to buy back the heirlooms they gave away and my sister sold. Make it make sense, please. I really don't know what to say anymore. Their entitlement is almost beyond comprehension at this point. My parents were never concerned about how unfairly they treated me. But now that their golden child has messed up and they are facing the consequences, it's my responsibility to bail them out. Also, just to clarify, because a few people in my messages seemed concerned, I'm doing fairly well in my life despite my family's attempts to manipulate and emotionally blackmail me. I know my parents think my life is incomplete because I haven't married or had children, but I've never felt more in control. I worked hard to get to where I am. I don't owe anyone anything, especially those who made it abundantly clear that I wasn't their priority unless they required something from me. So, no. I'm not going to waste my hard-earned money so that they can fix the mess they made. That is on them.